Christopher Nolan is back with an adaptation of the Odyssey. Now, I really love Christopher Nolan movies. He's directed my all-time favourite movie, The Dark Knight. I consider Oppenheimer to be the best biopic ever made. Anytime this guy releases a film, you bet your ass I'm going to be sitting there day one, ready to soak it all in. Unfortunately, The Odyssey was very disappointing. I'm just going to tell you right off the back, I did not think this movie was that good. Now, I don't think it's a terrible movie. I don't think this is one of the worst movies of the year or anything like that. There's a lot to like. In fact, there's a lot to love about this movie. It's just the fact that this is easily one of Nolan's weaker movies. And when I go and see a Christopher Nolan movie, I don't expect it to be solid. I expect it to be great. Now, I have never read The Odyssey. In fact, I don't know a lot about Greek mythology. It's not really a huge interest of mine. I know the basics, obviously, and a few gods and everything, but it's just not really something that really intrigues me. So I went into this movie completely blind. I knew a few character names, but nothing substantial. And while I do see why people love this story and why it is so impactful, I do think without this story, a lot of the stories that we write today would never come into fruition. It just didn't really grab me all that well. And that is because of a few narrative issues, but mainly a lot of technical issues as well. We'll get to the technical stuff later in the video, but first I do want to talk about the story of this movie. Now, the story of this movie does take a while to get going. In fact, I do think the entire first act was really, really bad. I think it was easily the worst part of this movie, and that's because there's a lot of exposition to tell you. And I know that you've got to get this all on the table. You really need us to know all of this, but there had to be a more interesting way to tell us all of this information, because it breaks the first rule of screenwriting, and that is show don't tell. Everything is just blurted out to you. There's nothing showing why Odysseus was a great warrior and why a lot of people respected him. We're just told that he's respected and why these people are in his kingdom now. So this exposition just comes off as blah, 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 blah. I know you need to know this. I know you need to know this. And do this and do this. And it just got so boring and really confusing. And I'll be honest, I was very concerned with that, because I thought, is this going to be the whole movie? Just a lot of people talking about things that we don't see? Thankfully, the movie does get over that, and then we get into the meat and potatoes of the story, where we follow Odysseus and his men trying to get back home from the Battle of Troy. And I have to say, this journey is absolutely thrilling, and that's mainly because of the things that they encounter. The Cyclops scene is the first major scene in this movie, and it was easily the best scene in this movie. The Cyclops itself looked absolutely fantastic. I believe it's an animatronic, and if it is, amazing. Fantastic work. I think there's a little bit of CGI as well, but overall, it looked brilliant, and it was a really, really tense scene. Now, call me a madman, but I do think this journey was a lot more compelling when Odysseus was on his own, and I get why he was with his men for the majority of this movie. It plays into his ending and his arc overall, but I just felt a lot more tension when he was trying to fend for himself. That was especially effective in the last act, which I thought was easily the best part of this movie. The last chunk of this movie, I can't really name a single flaw on a narrative sense, and some technical aspects as well. It was just perfect, and it ended off on a brilliant battle. There's some fantastic action in this movie. Despite other technical aspects failing, I do think the action was choreographed really well, the editing was really good, the effects when they were used were brilliant as well, the cinematography during those scenes, absolutely flawless. However, I will say, in interviews, they really hype these scenes up, because there is times where Matt Damon said, oh, if you see 1,000 people in a scene, in a battle scene, there's actually 1,000 people there. And I'm going to be honest, there wasn't that many people in an action scene. I think in the biggest action scene in this movie, there's about 50 people on screen at the same time. So maybe could have cut down on the hype a little bit. But these moments work because of the fantastic character work. I especially really loved Odysseus, the main character. I see him as I do the same with Oppenheimer. These people who think they're changing the world for the better, but in the end they realise that they've changed it for the worst. With Oppenheimer, he built the atomic bomb, and then in this film, he realises that he's brought the end of his society. And I really just loved his ending. It harkened back to a line at the very start of this movie. I thought it was so poetic, so effective. And while it's not a nice ending for him, it's also very deserved. Hello, Future Gibson here. I just wanted to mention one more thing. I really just like how they're complete opposites by the end. Oppenheimer learns of his mistake, but he can't do anything about it. And then we got Odysseus over here who, again, learns from his mistake, and he can move on from it. I just really like that little detail. They're polar opposites in many ways. Anyway, back to the review. I also really loved his dynamic with his men and how they sometimes are thinking of betraying him. There's one line here where he says, "Is it going to be a mutiny?" He says, "Your choice." I like that they're losing his trust now. So I really just like that we broke down this character. Even when he's alone, he's just getting beaten down constantly. We're breaking him until he realizes what he's actually done. Where this movie really doesn't work is when we move away from Odysseus. I will say I do like Tom Holland's character. I like that he goes out to try and find him, his father. And I do like a lot of the scenes with him. And I do think Tom Holland does a really, really good job. I love his interactions with certain characters. But it's never focused on much. And everyone else has the same issue for me. Anne Hathaway's character is not in the film as much as I thought she'd be. She's really underused. And Robert Pattinson, who was easily the best character in this movie, he delivered the best performance. He's not in the movie that much as well. And it's a shame because you really hate his character. And yet, he's hardly in the movie until right towards the end. And these characters have their moments. They really get their times to shine. It's just because Odysseus is the main character. This is his journey, so we're constantly following him. And I feel like, obviously, if you want to focus on the other characters more, this movie could have been easily 4, maybe 4.5 hours long. It could have been that long. So I do think Christopher Nolan was very, very careful with the runtime, but it also really affected the overall story. So the narrative can feel really, really messy, but it's not the messiest thing in this movie. I do think the technical aspects of this movie is really where this movie fails. Cinematography-wise, I don't have an issue. I think every shot in this movie looks absolutely gorgeous because, lo and behold, Christopher Nolan loves using real locations. If you see a battle on the beach, there's a battle on the beach. If you see a battle in a cave, there's a battle in a cave. Maybe it's, foam and stuff, but still, it looked realistic. And it looks fantastic. The lighting, the shadows. I really like the use of fire in this movie, especially in the Battle of Troy. I like that's the only lighting in that battle. But where this movie fails is with the editing. I think, and you may think I'm over-exaggerating, but I'm just going to say it now. I think this is some of the worst editing I've ever seen in a blockbuster. I don't know what the editors were doing during the production of this film. I don't know if they were having seizures throughout the editing process, but the editing in this movie was an absolute mess. I can't name a single good cut here because there are times where someone says a line and then someone immediately says something else. It's like me going, "Oh, how was your day? Oh yeah, it was really good, it was really good." And then there's some weird cuts in between shots. There's one bit where someone's about to get stabbed and then we just instantly cut away. And I get that they're trying to make it really impactful. I'm guessing that was the thing they were trying to do, but it felt so off. And then there's moments where someone is doing something and then there's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cuts. Like, because someone moved a hand or something. I'm like, what's going on here? And what's even weirder is that it's not that bad during the action scenes. The action scenes were the best parts of this movie because I could actually tell what was happening. But whenever there's a conversation or someone's walking around or running, it's just a million cuts and it was so distracting. And then we get to the floor, which I don't think anyone is going to be surprised with me saying, the sound editing. I don't know what it is about Christopher Nolan movies, but this guy could not get his sound right. I don't know why. Is he deaf or something? Because there are moments where the music especially is so loud. It's very bassy, the music in this movie. And there are times where people are trying to talk over it, and I could not hear what they were saying whatsoever. And also, whilst the music does sound really, really good sometimes, I like it when it's very bassy. I also like the use of drums throughout the movie as well. There's also ones where it's like this clacking sound. That sounded really cool. But why on earth is there a Travis Scott song during the credits? Why is Travis Scott this murderer in this movie anyway? So I don't know what was going on behind the scenes with the production because the editing, the sound design, the music in this movie is so dodgy. It felt very amateur at times, unfortunately, and that is something I should not be saying about a Christopher Nolan film. And then we get into the acting, which is mixed. Some people are fantastic, some people are not great, and the first person that wasn't great was surprisingly Matt Damon as Odysseus, which is very annoying because he is in 90% of this movie. You follow him from minute one. You have to like his character, and I do like his character. And I don't think Matt Damon was bad in this movie. He just doesn't really get the opportunity to show off his acting chops. You know how people say that Cillian Murphy deserved that Oscar 3 years ago? I can't really see Matt Damon getting an Oscar nom for this performance. As I said, it's not a bad performance, but in a Christopher Nolan movie, in an Oscar-worthy movie to some people, I expect a little bit more. And also, it pains me to say this, but Anne Hathaway, look, she's my celebrity crush. I think she's beautiful. But she wasn't great in this movie. There's times where she really shines, but there's also a few times where she's either very dry or she's overacting. There's one very dramatic scene towards the third act, which I felt the dialogue was pretty good, but I also didn't really love her performance. But rest assured, there is some good acting in this movie. Tom Holland as Telemachus, I thought he was really, really good here, especially towards the third act where he tries to bring out a little bit more emotion. Then you got Jon Bernthal, who's not in the movie as much as I thought he'd be, but he was really, really good. I just love Jon Bernthal. He's a really, really great actor. I can't wait to see him in Brand New Day in a couple of weeks. However, he didn't ask to tell us something, so I'm going to have to give this movie a half a star, unfortunately. An actor that wasn't in this movie as much, though, but really shined for me was Samantha Morton as Cersei the Witch. She was really, really intimidating, very creepy, very mysterious as well. She really shined here. But then you get my favourite character and my favourite performance in this movie, and that's Robert Pattinson as Antinous. I believe that's how you say the name. He plays an arsehole in this movie. He's very disgusting. You just want to hit him in the face. But he was really good at playing this type of character. Honestly, I'd love to see him playing these types of characters in the future. Unfortunately, all of the actors, bad or good, are really affected by the really rocky dialogue in this movie. I get that humans talk way different to how we do now. And I get that Nolan really wanted to modernise the dialogue. I've got no issue with that. But you should at least try and keep it respectful to how we spoke back then, because there's some dialogue in this movie that sounded really, really bad. You're pining for a daddy that doesn't exist, like a snivelling bastard. I believe that's what he said. And that was really, really corny. And there were so many lines like that which are just, oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe don't write that next time in a Greek mythology film. So yeah, overall, I thought The Odyssey was a big disappointment. Did I think it was a really bad movie? No, I think there is a lot to love about this movie. I really loved parts of the narrative. I really enjoyed the entire third act. I can't really name a single flaw with the narrative in the third act. There's some fantastic performances. The cinematography is fantastic. The action's brilliant as well. However, it really takes its time to get going. There's so much tell, don't show exposition in this movie. I also think some of the dialogue was really rough. The editing, some of the worst editing I've seen in a blockbuster in many years. The sound mixing's really bad. There's some really interesting choices with the music. There's just a lot that really held this movie back. And that's really upsetting because I really wanted to latch onto the narrative in this movie. And I understand why it's so important now. But unfortunately, there's a lot of things that hold it back. So yeah, The Odyssey was a big disappointment. Not a bad movie, but not great either. It's just solid. So I'm going to have to give The Odyssey a 6.5 out of 10. It pains me to give it that score. It really does. I want to give every single Nolan movie an 8 out of 10 higher, but I'm going to be honest, this one just really disappointed me. So yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on The Odyssey in the comments. Do you really like it? Do you not? Let me know. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, people. Have a good day, and see you later.